What if I told you that somewhere deep in Russia, far from Moscow's spotlight, there's a town that's never existed on any official map, but had direct ties to Vladimir Putin? What if the people who lived there vanished one by one, their names erased not just from the records, but from memory itself? This isn't a conspiracy theory. It's a piece of history hidden between the lines. A place where secrets were currency, silence was survival, and one man's rise began not in the halls of the Kremlin, but in the shadows of a place no outsider was ever supposed to find. In this episode, we're not just telling a story. We're taking you inside something most people weren't meant to know. A hidden settlement, a classified operation, and the choices made in a place that didn't officially exist. You'll hear the file marked 37, the train that arrived at 2:14 a.m. every third Thursday, and the young officer who never signed his real name, not once. You'll feel the cold of a hallway lit only by a single flickering bulb, and the tension of a phone that never rings, unless something's gone wrong. This is the story of the town that wasn't on any map. You know that feeling when a place feels too quiet to be empty? That was Red Square that night. It was past 2 a.m., and not a single light was on in the Kremlin windows, but the cobblestones still echoed faint footsteps. Not tourists. Not guards. Just one man walking slowly with his phone pressed to his ear, Putin. He didn't speak right away. He listened. And nodded. Then finally, he whispered a name. One no one was supposed to hear. The man on the other end of the line was someone from his past. Not political. Not military. Something older. Something buried. And when he hung up, he didn't go back to his private residence. He walked through the main courtyard, past Lenin's mausoleum, and straight to a spot just behind St. Basil's Cathedral. From there, he vanished. No security camera caught it. No satellite picked it up. But he was gone for 3 full hours. This isn't a conspiracy theory. It's a fact with too many people trying to deny it. The night logs from his detail were scrubbed. Cell towers near Red Square showed his encrypted line still active, but stationary. 3 hours. No movement. Just silence. When he returned, there was mud on his shoes, and his jacket was zipped wrong, as if he'd put it on in the dark. What we do know is that the following morning, at precisely 7:04 a.m., an emergency directive was issued to the Ministry of Defense, marked Spectre Level, a classification almost no one even knows exists. The file didn't name enemies or locations. Just coordinates. And a single word, retrieve. What was buried underneath Red Square, and why did Putin go alone? Back in 1986, a Soviet engineer named Oleg Myrov wrote in his private journal about an unfinished underground structure beneath the square. Not a subway tunnel. Not a bunker. He called it the Hall of Silence. At the time, he was overseeing pressure systems for Metro Line 2 when he and his crew hit reinforced stone where there shouldn't have been any. After they cracked through it, they found a door. Sealed. Not welded. Not bolted. Sealed. As if it had never been meant to open again. He reported it. His superiors told him to forget it. 1 week later, he was reassigned to the Arctic. A year later, he disappeared. No funeral. No official death record. Only a canceled pension. Fast forward to 1999. Putin is about to assume the presidency. One of the first things he does, barely documented, is commission a restoration of the underground infrastructure near Red Square. But the project had no budget, no contractor names, and zero press coverage. The only trace was a satellite image showing 3 unmarked trucks parked in a perfect triangle formation around the cathedral. They stayed for 6 days. Then vanished. Here's where it gets stranger. In 2005, during a state visit with German intelligence officials, one operative casually brought up the legend of Kamer 12, a rumored KGB site for archiving unsanctioned operations. Putin didn't blink. Didn't smile. But the translator later admitted that after the meeting, Putin asked for the agent's name, birthplace, and maternal grandmother's maiden name. 2 months later, the agent retired early. Voluntarily. At least on paper. Multiple sources now point to something being down there. But it's not gold. It's not weapons. It's something else. A vault. But not the kind you open with keys. The kind you open only if you've already lost control. Why was Putin's jacket zipped wrong that night? Why did his shoes have mud not found anywhere else in Red Square? And why, for 3 days after, was his public schedule suddenly rescheduled due to fatigue, something never before announced for him? There's one last detail. That same night, a flicker of light was captured by a malfunctioning tourist webcam overlooking the square. It blinked once. Just once. Like a short circuit. But when enhanced, the timestamp lines up to the exact minute Putin vanished. And if you zoom in, if you really look, you can see the shadow of a second figure behind him. Not following. Standing still. Waiting. And that is just the beginning. The name Oleg Myrov had vanished from every official Soviet archive by the late 80s. No employee records. No family links. Not even a tax ID. But in Berlin, there was a box. A dusty, forgotten box in the basement of an old East German administrative building, once used by the Stasi. It had sat untouched for decades, until a renovation crew found it in 2011. Inside were film reels, torn blueprints, and an envelope marked in shaky Russian. They don't know what they've built. One of the reels was labeled, Red Square, Sublevel D. The footage was grainy, shaky, obviously handheld. But what it showed was chilling. A man, presumably Myrov, walking through a tunnel, past steam pipes and crumbling concrete, toward a massive metallic door. It had no handle. No hinges. Just an embossed Soviet emblem and a small inset keypad, blinking red. He stops. Turns to the camera. His face is pale. Sweat beads at his temples. In halting German, he says, "This is not what we thought it was. We uncovered something old. Much older. And it was never meant for us." Then static. The tape ends. But not before a brief frame, half a second, shows what's behind him, a wall with markings. Symbols not in Russian. Not in any known language. When Western intelligence analysts got hold of the footage in 2013, the conclusion was immediate: hoax. Too convenient. Too cinematic. But one analyst, a linguist named Dr. Eva Koenig, wasn't so sure. She'd seen the markings before. Not in any database, but in a children's book. A fairy tale, published in Moscow in 1933, titled The Door That Never Opens. The author? An engineer turned writer who died in a sanitarium 3 months after publication. His final drawing? A metallic door beneath a domed structure with a red star. Koenig dug deeper. She found out that Myrov had applied for asylum in East Germany in 1988 under a fake name, Joseph Keller. His file was flagged but never processed. Too close to the wall's collapse. But in a Berlin hospital's records, there's an entry, male, mid-50s, severe radiation sickness. Claimed exposure underground. Delirious. Repeating phrase, the code is wrong. We were never meant to open it. He died 14 hours later. No visitors. No autopsy. So what was Myrov trying to warn Berlin about? And why was that door so important? Koenig traced the blueprints found in the box and overlaid them with modern Moscow schematics. The door was directly beneath the central obelisk of Red Square. But the tunnel access had been sealed, deliberately, by it was never supposed to exist. Not officially. Not on any Soviet map, not in any public archive. Just a faint smudge on a declassified satellite image, blurred edges, no roads in, no roads out. A place where things were sent, not people. Vladimir knew it only by whispers, Tselenogradzi, they called it. Locals spoke the name with a drop in volume, like a superstition. Nobody asked questions about it. And those who did didn't ask twice. The driver didn't talk during the ride. He didn't need to. The road told the story, a narrow path through thick pines, military checkpoints manned by silent men with hard eyes, concrete barriers that hadn't moved in years. The air was thick with distance. Not geographical, but emotional. As if time had paused out here and never restarted. When the car finally stopped, it wasn't in front of a building but at the edge of a metal gate with a faded red star. Beyond it, rows of gray structures stretched across a clearing like silent witnesses. Vladimir stepped out and the first thing he noticed was the silence. Not a single bird. Just wind and memory. A guard approached, younger than Vladimir expected. He saluted without emotion and handed over a key, a simple brass one, oddly domestic. "Block C, room 14, he said, then turned back toward his post. That was the welcome. No briefings. No introductions. Just a key and an assumption, you're already part of this. Inside, the corridor smelled of iodine and dust. The walls had peeling paint and old propaganda posters curling at the corners. But Vladimir wasn't here for aesthetics. He was here to find whatever they had buried in this place, behind numbered doors and unspoken agreements. Room 14 was locked tight. Not with electronics or keypads, just a heavy deadbolt. When he turned the key, the door creaked open like something had been waiting. The air was stale, dry, untouched. The room was lined with file cabinets, each marked only with a date, years from the late 70s through the early 90s. A single desk sat in the corner with a green banker's lamp still plugged in. Dust motes danced in the beam of sunlight cutting through the blinds. And on the desk, a leather-bound folder with his name on it. He opened it. Inside were transcripts, pages and pages of interviews. Handwritten notes. Redacted sentences blacked out with thick marker. But what shook him wasn't the content. It was the signature at the bottom of each page. His own. Except, he had no memory of these conversations. No memory of being here before. The handwriting was his. The phrasing was his. But the words, they didn't feel like they came from him. There were references to places he hadn't been. The hallway was empty. At least it looked that way. But the footsteps he'd heard moments before weren't imagined. They had weight, rhythm, a kind of confidence only someone familiar with the space would have. Vladimir stepped out of room 14, slowly pulling the door shut behind him. The key, still warm in his palm, suddenly felt heavier. He turned left, toward the echo. The hallway stretched into shadows, flickering with the occasional buzz of a failing ceiling light. Pipes groaned behind the walls. Somewhere above, a vent hummed like it was breathing. The building felt alive. Not metaphorically, viscerally. As if it knew he was here. Vladimir, the voice came from the far end. Low. Steady. Spoken like a greeting, not a question. He froze. It wasn't the voice that scared him. It was the tone. Familiar. Not from memory, but from instinct. Like a tune you don't remember learning but can hum perfectly. Come, the voice said again. No names. No titles. No introductions. He followed it. Past the rusted filing cabinets. Past doors marked with letters instead of numbers. Past a broken fire extinguisher mounted on the wall like a forgotten relic. And then, a door, slightly open, leaking warm light. Inside, a small room, plain, functional. A table. 2 chairs. A reel-to-reel tape recorder. And a man already sitting there. Not old, not young. Clean-shaven. Wearing a dark sweater, no insignias, no rank. Just ordinary, like a teacher or clerk. But his eyes held time. The kind that had seen too much to ever be bored again. Sit, the man said. Vladimir obeyed. The tape recorder clicked on by itself. The reel spun, but no tape had been loaded. Just the empty sound of machines doing what they were programmed to do. The man folded his hands and looked at him calmly. You made it further than we thought. Who are you? Vladimir asked. That's not important. What is this place? That's even less important. Vladimir leaned forward. Then what do you want from me? The man smiled faintly, not out of amusement, but recognition. I want you to listen. And with that, he pressed a button. A voice played. It was his own. Older. Slower. Measured. Vladimir couldn't remember recording it. But there it was, unmistakably his. The air inside the last chamber was colder, thicker. It wasn't on any official blueprint, nor was there any security camera pointing at its rusted door. If you didn't know what to look for, you'd think it was just another janitor closet tucked into the deepest sublevel of the building. But Putin knew. He hesitated at the threshold, letting his fingers rest on the metal handle. This wasn't the kind of hesitation born from fear. It was calculation. He knew what lay inside wasn't just dangerous, it was a mirror. Not the kind that reflected your face, but the kind that reflected what you chose to forget. The door creaked open. A faint hum escaped the dark, the low electrical buzz of outdated machinery, monitors left in permanent sleep, and an old ventilation system still wheezing like it remembered something. There was a desk in the center, perfectly square, lit by a single desk lamp with a green shade, the kind you saw in Soviet interrogation rooms. Beside it sat a stack of red folders, untouched, their corners yellowing. On the far wall, a corkboard hung crooked, cluttered with photos, handwritten notes, and 3 strings connecting 2 points labeled Berlin and Minsk. Putin walked in, steps careful, almost reverent. He didn't sit. He scanned the corkboard, eyes pausing at a photo of a man in uniform, his father's face. Then, a younger version of himself, arms crossed with a smile that hadn't yet learned to guard itself. Another photo, a burned-out car on the outskirts of Dresden. A note beneath it read, "Operation never logged." He reached for the top folder. It was marked with his old code name, the one only 3 men still alive would recognize. Inside, transcripts, field notes, a map drawn by hand. It wasn't just intelligence, it was the record of every shadow he'd ever sent, every ghost mission erased from official memory. Then he saw it. A small cassette tape, half wrapped in an old tissue. No label. Just the familiar red line of recording. He picked it up slowly, as if afraid it might play itself. There was no player in the room. But he didn't need one. He knew exactly what it contained. A voice. A promise. A betrayal. Years ago, it had been recorded in that very room, before the paint had begun to peel, before the dust settled. A conversation that should have changed everything, but didn't. Or couldn't. Putin placed the tape back inside the folder and closed it. His hands trembled for just a second. Not from weakness. From memory. He didn't take the folder. He didn't destroy it. He simply left it there, for whoever was meant to find it next. He turned off the desk lamp. The hum faded. The silence returned. And when he walked out, he locked the door behind him, knowing full well that history wouldn't. Prompt for thumbnail image, 16:9, cinematic, horizontal. A dimly lit Soviet-era underground room with a rusted metal desk at the center, a green-shaded interrogation lamp casting light on a stack of red folders and an unlabeled cassette tape. In the background, a corkboard filled with strings and photos. The atmosphere is tense, shadowy, with a ghostly aura. The door is slightly open, showing the silhouette of a man, Putin, walking away. Hyper-realistic, cinematic style. What if this place really existed? What if people still live there, training, listening, disappearing, while the rest of the world forgets it ever mattered? The town that wasn't on any map might not be gone. It might just be waiting. If you felt even a flicker of curiosity during this journey, hit that subscribe button. We're just getting started. Hidden Chapters uncovers what history tried to erase.